So in ITSM Express Story, we have built something, and now we are looking at how do things look like from the normal operations perspective. Big part of that one is already something that we have identified what are the risks, and we have built the services to be as secure as they are. But of course, the risks change all the time in information security. So therefore, protecting that one in form of information security is important. We also measure the services. We have already planned earlier as part of service design how the services can be measured so we can ensure that they are delivering value. But we now also then execute that one. So therefore we take that one topic more in detail now because it also pretty much happens in this stage. And the most important one is to learn from what we are doing. So continual improvement in form of innovation, optimization, all that kind of stuff. That's really what the service is all about, and a good service provision is all about. So we will look up all of these three processes separately in this stage. Again, we have been quite a lot of technically focused, and if we think about the questionable approach in the DevOps thinking and agile thinking is that has been quite a lot of feature focused. And for that purpose, the measurement of progress has been new features. It's not whether they are, how beneficial they are, how much the users actually use those ones. But one significant thing that is happening during the development is the importance of security. And one might consider that what is the value of the service if it's not secure. I mean, you have a car, but if it doesn't have the brakes, would you drive the car even though it would have all the other features? Obviously not, because it would be suicidal. So therefore, the information security needs to be there, and it's something that needs to be planned in. It's a continuous activity, and it's something that just simply must be done in the current environment, or otherwise the value of the service is zero or beyond zero. Information security is an area where a lot of things happen. And if you want to be overstressed and cynical, welcome to be an information security professional. I have one of my half my job is already there, so I guess many of you will join me. But anyway, good thing is that when we talk about the services in our context, quite many of the stuff that bring the information security are actually practical IT service management stuff. Whether you're looking at the thing from administrative ISO 27001 perspective or any other law perspective, the same key things happens over there. So are you storing your data securely? How you are granting the access rights? How you are reviewing the access rights? How you are analyzing the risks, and how you are planning the service to be secure, and especially the vulnerability management. So in that sense, it's an important thing. It's not the only thing. It's a thing that will have more focus in the future. So therefore, let's look into that one in detail too. The most known approach to information security currently is and referred to is the ISO 27000 that describes the information security management within the organization. Of course, there are a lot of other things and a lot of frameworks and laws and regulations that affect in providing IT services, and that would be a topic for several additional courses. But let's look at the basics, and especially from the perspective that what all services must do. So you have some initial understanding what these at least means in your context where you are managing or operating an IT service. Though not clearly stated over here, but we want the information, protect the information, and so that the service can be used in secure manner to meet the outcomes. The information security management process it aims to do that one. Um, the world is imperfect, so we cannot do everything. There simply isn't understanding for that one, nor there are resources. So we should start with a risk-based approach, understand our service in the context where it's used, and identify the most likely or risks that we have on the information security and try to find solution for those ones. That's good enough to start with. And information security is everybody's job. You might have an information security professionals in your organization, and they are bringing in the best practices, creating guidance, assisting you in the job, but it's everybody's business, including yours. It's the whole organization thinking about their organization level tasks. It's the service thinking from the service perspective. It's the suppliers thinking about their own work and you thinking about their security. And of course, consumers. They should be using the security, using the service in secure way. Like in nowadays, we have a lot of different kind of frauds concerning the bank accounts. So it's even though the accounts and account management by the banks would be safe, but if the users don't use their credentials in a smart way, then they can still lose their money, which is a security issue. So what to do about this one is to have a systematic approach to identify what can go wrong and on security perspective and regularly visit that question and take necessary actions how to mitigate the risks. And it's important to notice that it's the nature of the information security that things that we consider to be safe today are not safe tomorrow because somebody finds a way to exploit the existing setup. So therefore, both the solutions as well as the approaches that we need to make products safe or services safe, that evolves constantly. So try to look in the future. Let's look at what kind of things do we need in a year or two so we can actually have time to direct our service against that one. And of course, there are external legal requirements to our services, a little bit depending on what market area we are. If we are in a bank, we have a little bit more, or if we are providing just plain non-human related or non-financially related software, for example, then we might have some less. But eventually, like CRA, Cyber Resilience Act, practically means that all services that are provided to externals and handed over money must be secure. And what is not in the scope of that one is likely in the scope of other laws like NIS2. There are so many things in information security that putting them is a single process. It sounds a little bit weird, but let's take the approach that the ITSM Express has in the form of simplification. What to at least do. First of all, you need to know what you have, and that requires knowing your assets. So the assets in this case means things that are important or contribute to the information security. And it all starts from, in my experience in the organizations, like what are the services? What kind of information they have? Where is the information located? So what kind of hardware do you have? And what is the status of those components that constitute a service? I mean, software and coding practices and security tests and that kind of stuff. And So it all starts from the services and their components and their contents, and also look outside. The information security itself looks also outside of digital. So all kind of it starts with stuff important for the business, which means who knows what, who is allowed to know what, what is the physical security of service of facilities, or how to how to not to talk about work issues at the public spaces. So all this is part of the information security, though not in our particular context of IT services, even though it's important for us to actually not to put the passwords or notes, or then talk about security things in public areas and so on. But anyway, know those services, know their contents, what information, what kind of devices there are, what kind of connections, evaluate their role, evaluate their security, and required level of security, like encryption, authentication, and that kind of stuff. So that is something to start with. So to start with the services and their contents and understanding those ones, you might evaluate external things happening to them, like physically flooding, or then malicious threats, like physically somebody going over there and manipulating things, or then of course the most common way to look at it is to try to some evil to sneak in into your services through vulnerabilities that exist in your different components, like firewalls or application or integrations. So try to figure out in this sense what can go wrong, and there are public frameworks like OWASP top 10 risks. You can start with those ones, and try to evaluate the threats and the vulnerabilities that you have against those threats, and then try to make some improvement plan. What kind of improvements do you need? What is the minimum requirement for the components? I mean, encryption at rest or encryption in transit, and then authentication, but also kind of vulnerability management and network isolation issues. Those are all design things, and then there are also ongoing things to for example, to patch the required assets so that they don't have the vulnerabilities that are found. So there are of course things that are need to be managed from the organization perspective and level, like all the services should have follow the following rules and principles and have the following things in place. So there are corporate policies that should be applied, and then of course the services need to take this guidance and implement in their context in secure way. But one way to ensure that nothing gets wrong is to do things safely. We already talked about this one in the risk management. So creating clear and secure processes, like ensuring backups or updating the software, or separating the admin accounts from the operational accounts. All these kind of security features, or secure processes, ways of working, is a good thing. It also, we'll talk about access control in the next slide, but that's a very important part of the security. And of course, as the information and the landscape changes all the time, then the people aspect is important. If people are aware, they notice things and they don't accidentally do stupid things. And also, as the people are the softest factor in the security, they are usually most targeted factors, like emailing people stuff in a phishing campaign is still the most common thing to get the evil in. So training employees how to act securely, especially considering the email as a channel is one of the key things to focus on, but there are a zillion other things that organization should consider and teach their employees. So one of the concrete stuff that you can do is to focus on the access control. In January 2026, when I look at the LinkedIn and the related security postings, there is a tendency that, of course, the vulnerabilities are still there, and the social engineering is still there as a attack channel, but the getting the identities and related access is an important attack vector. And one of the key things is to plan the access control in a smart way. But physically, it belongs to the whole corporate, but on application or service level, it's somewhere where you can contribute. So it should be secure in a way. Using the identities with multi-factor authentication is one thing to start with. Having role-based access control, meaning that you split the information content within your service into pieces and only allow people to see the pieces that they really need, is actually then a very good control to control that not the information ends up in wrong hands through the people. When we talk about information security, we often refer to the CIA acronym that stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The confidentiality means that is the information available for only those who need to see it. And the overall access management is one thing, and the role-based distribution of the content is a second thing. So that's a very important one. And many breaches of information, if we look at what ends up in the news, is that some hackers group has been able to download the data from, for example, Nike or some other party, and it's a break against the confidentiality. The second one is the integrity, which means that is the information correct? Does it stay up to date, or can people how we have secured that only authorized people can change it? And if I would actually try to put wrong information in the context and try to poison the data content, that would be an attack against the integrity. And we have challenges on data integrity also without information security. It's also about, do people actually update the information? That is a question about the integrity, not necessarily from the information security perspective, but still. And the third aspect is the availability of the information. Can we use the information when we need to? And all these kind of denial of service kind of attacks are attacks against availability. So at least those three things should be considered from your service data content perspective. So when considering putting up access control on services, so there should be some kind of policies, like you most likely get the basics, like all systems should be accessed on personal accounts. They should have role-specific division of access and related permissions on that one. And the policy could be also be that only the administrator work is done with the admin account, and then all the normal person-related work with the personal account. So when people gain the access or are accessing the service, they should be authenticated. Is the person who claims to be the same person? That can be done with the username and password, but also in multi-factor way with, for example, text messages. Then we authorized in some way, so we technically give the person the right authorization to access the service once after we have identified the person, and then we would be able to audit who have the access or who has been using the service. And one of the key things to set up and planning the service is that how do people get the access rights? What kind of approvals are needed and what kind of evidence is left behind about granting the access. And of course, people leaving the organization should also lose their access rights. That's the second thing to consider. And the third thing to consider is to audit the existing users and their service usage and evaluate whether everybody still needs the level of access that they have. So this whole concept about who are the users, what kind of access they have, how do we give it to them, how do we remove it, and how do we ensure who has what access and is it relevant. This all falls into the acronym of identity and access management. That is usually done the approach as a whole in the organization, and it also shows in practically in context when we talk about accesses to your applications, both to humans as well as services. I mean, computing systems in form of integrations and AI.